I was standing in the kitchen, still wearing the black dress from my wife's funeral, when my daughter screamed at me. "You're not family. You never were." She said it with her whole lung capacity, voice cracking at the end, like the words themselves were too big and poisonous to fit in her body. Then she stormed down the hall, slammed her bedroom door so hard a photo of my wife slipped sideways on the wall and hung there crooked, like even the house had flinched. I just stood there holding a mug of tea I wasn't going to drink, feeling the floor tilt under my feet. The worst part wasn't the words, even though they sliced me open. The worst part was that for one brief, horrible second, I believed her. Because what kind of real family ends up alone in the kitchen the night of their wife's funeral, trying to remember if it's okay to eat when you're grieving? What kind of real mother gets screamed at by the girl she's raised for 6 years and has no idea how to fix it? I set the mug down before I dropped it. My hands were shaking. My head was buzzing with everyone else's voices from the day. "She's just grieving. You know how teenagers are. Give her time." No one had asked if I was okay. No one had said, "You lost your wife." Because in the eyes of most of them, I was still the add-on. The extra. The person who came later. Not the one who cooked dinners, helped with homework, stayed up through fevers and panic attacks. Not the one who spent nights in the ER when asthma flared up, holding a little girl's hand while my wife paced the hallway. Just the woman my wife married after her kid was old enough to notice and judge. The woman she left everything to. I didn't know that part yet. Not that night. I didn't know that a few weeks later there'd be a quiet knock on the door, a courier in a gray jacket, and a thick envelope that would change everything. I didn't know I'd open that envelope and find the deed to the house my daughter tried to throw me out of. I didn't know my name would be on it alone. And I didn't know that one piece of paper would force all of us, me, my daughter, and my late wife's family, to finally face who was really family, and who was just playing the role when it suited them. This isn't a story about a house. It's a story about grief, entitlement, and the kind of justice that doesn't arrive with revenge, but with truth. My name is Hannah. And this is how my daughter went from screaming, "You're not family," to learning that sometimes, legal next of kin isn't the only kind that matters. My wife's name was Julia. Even saying her name in my head feels like opening a photo album you're not sure you're ready for. It's all there. The laugh that filled rooms, the dimples, the way she always pushed her curls back with the heel of her hand when she was concentrating. She had a daughter when we met, a 9-year-old named Lily with skinned knees, suspicious eyes, and a little turquoise backpack she refused to let anyone touch. The first time I came over for dinner, Lily watched me like I was an alien that might abduct her mother. "You're the new girlfriend?" she asked, blunt as only a 9-year-old can be. "Yes," I said. "Is that okay?" She shrugged. "You're pretty. I guess that's good. The last one wore too much perfume." I laughed until I saw Julia's face flush with embarrassment. I'd fallen a little in love with both of them right then. I knew, getting involved with a woman who had a child, that it wouldn't be simple. I knew there would be loyalties older than me, histories that didn't include me, wounds from Lily's father, a man who drifted in and out of their lives when it suited him, that I couldn't see. But I also knew I wanted to try. For the first 2 years, stepmother wasn't a word we used. It was just Mom and Hannah, or my moms, when Lily was feeling generous and brave enough to say it in public. It came and went like a tide. Some days I was included in every sentence. Mommy and Hannah took me to the park. Other days it was Julia alone who got the credit. I didn't push. Kids don't owe you trust on your timetable. Then, slowly, things settled. I learned how she liked her grilled cheese, burnt on one side, inexplicably. I learned which teachers she hated and which ones scared her. I learned what her nightmares were about. Getting lost, people leaving, doors locking her out. "Mom says you'll always be here," she told me once when I tucked her in. "I plan to be," I said. She squinted at me. "Don't get hit by a bus, okay?" "I'll avoid buses," I promised. It felt like the kind of joke you make when you're sure the universe isn't listening. We got married when Lily was 12. She wore a pale yellow dress with Converse sneakers and walked her mother down the aisle because, as she loudly informed the relatives who whispered in the back row, 2 brides don't need a man. She toasted us at the reception with sparkling cider, standing on a chair. "To my moms," she said. "Please don't be gross in front of me, but also I'm glad." Everyone laughed and clapped. I cried into my napkin. I thought we were solid. Not perfect. Teenage years are their own storm, but solid. Until Julia got sick. Until the hospital visits started. Until Lily's world cracked right down the center. And I became, in her eyes, the person closest enough to blame. It started with what we thought was the flu. Fatigue, fever, a cough that wouldn't go away. Julia was stubborn. "I'll see a doctor if I'm still sick on Monday," she kept saying, then next week, then after this project at work. By the time she finally went, the doctor's face told us before his words did. "Lung cancer. Advanced." "But I don't smoke," she said, almost offended. "Sometimes," he said softly, "it doesn't care." We did all the things people do. The specialists, the second opinions, the chemo, the nutrition plans, the hopeful talk. I watched my wife lose weight and hair and little pieces of herself at a time. I watched my daughter retreat into her phone, into school, into silence. A 14-year-old is not equipped to watch her mother become small. None of us were equipped. There were nights Julia would hold my hand and whisper, "If I don't make it, you'll take care of her, right?" I'd stare at her, horrified by the if. "Yes," I said every time. "Of course. Why would you even ask?" "Because," she said, looking at the ceiling, "love isn't always enough. Law matters. People's opinions matter. You know how my parents are." Her parents. I did know. They had been vaguely polite about us until the wedding, then clearly distant afterward. They sent holiday cards addressed to Julia and Lily for 3 years straight before finally adding my name in tiny letters. They were old-fashioned in the worst sense of the word. They loved their daughter, tolerated her being gay, and acted like I was a temporary inconvenience, a phase of defiance that got legally locked in. "I'll take care of it," she said one day, more serious. "The paperwork. The will. I want it clear. I want you protected. I want her protected." "You don't need to think about that right now," I said. But she did. She always did. The day she signed the last set of papers, she came home with a tired smile and kissed me. "It's done," she said. "You're next of kin. And I made sure Lily's future is solid too." I wrapped my arms around her, not understanding how important those words were. Not really. At the time, it felt like signing up for a job I wanted. Guardian. Mom. Wife even after death. I didn't know it would feel later, like a verdict handed down in a courtroom I never stepped into. Julia died on a Tuesday afternoon. The word died still feels wrong. Like there should be a softer one for people who go unwillingly, inch by inch, with grace and apologies and whispered love. She was in the hospital. Lily went to school that day because Julia insisted. "I don't want her sitting in a hard chair all day watching me sleep," she'd said. "Let her have one normal day." It wasn't a normal day. I was there when her breathing changed. Shallow, irregular. I was there when the nurse called the doctor. I was there when the machines beeped warning and then didn't. I held her hand and told her I loved her, and then, because it felt like both too much and not enough, I said, "We'll be okay. I promise. I'll take care of her." She didn't answer. The silence was a scream. I called the school. They brought Lily to the office, then put me on speaker. "Hey, honey," I said, my voice barely recognizable. "Can you come to the hospital? I'll pick you up." "Is she okay?" she asked. "There are questions you never want to answer." I started and my throat closed. The school counselor quietly took the phone and said something gentle. I don't remember the words. I just remember the sound Lily made when she realized. By the time we got home that night, our house felt like a museum. Every object was a relic. Her mug by the sink. Her sweater on the back of a chair. Her scent in the hallway. Lily walked into the living room, looked around, and then turned on me like a storm. "You were supposed to save her," she screamed. My chest splintered. Lily, I couldn't. You're the grown-up. You're her wife. You promised." She shoved past me, ran down the hall, and slammed her door. My mother-in-law called 20 minutes later. "We're on our way," she said. "Lily should stay with us for a while." For a while. Like grief was a weekend trip. "She's home now," I said numbly. "In that house." Her mother's voice sharpened. "Don't you think that's a little confusing?" "It's her home," I said. "It was my daughter's home," she countered. I felt something cold coil in my stomach. "We can discuss this tomorrow," I said. "We're all exhausted." She clicked her tongue. "Hannah, you have to think of what's best for her. You're not. Well, we'll talk tomorrow." "Not what?" I wanted to ask. "Not real. Not permanent. Not blood." But I didn't have the strength to fight. Not that day. The thing about grief is that it doesn't just crack open sadness. It cracks open every fear and insecurity and buried resentment people have carefully put away. In the week between Julia's death and the funeral, the pressure built. Lily vacillated between clinging to me so tightly my ribs hurt and acting like I was a stranger who'd wandered into her life by mistake. She slept in my bed one night, curled up against me like she had when she was 6, whispering, "Don't leave me too." "I won't," I said, meaning it. The next morning, she wouldn't look at me. "My grandparents are coming," she said. "I want to stay with them." Her grandparents swept in with casseroles and condolences and subtle territorial energy. They treated the house like it belonged to them. They rearranged things. They opened drawers without asking. They held whispered conversations in corners that went silent when I walked in. On the day of the funeral, my father-in-law put a hand on my shoulder at the cemetery. "You know we'll take care of Lily," he said. "I will too," I replied. His hand tightened slightly. "She's our granddaughter," he said. "You have been around. But this is delicate." "She's my daughter," I said before I could stop myself. He smiled in that way certain men do when a woman says something they think is adorable but incorrect. "She's Julia's daughter," he said. "You were a good support. But we'll take it from here. Take it from here." Like I was handing over a borrowed item. The reception after the funeral was at our house. It felt like people walking through our grief with muddy shoes. At one point, I found Lily in the kitchen with her grandparents. They were talking in low voices. When I walked in, she went rigid. "We were just discussing school," my mother-in-law said. "Lily thinks it might be better to transfer somewhere closer to us." "You live an hour away," I said, stunned. "We'd move," she said quickly. "To give her a stable home. A fresh start." It took me a second to understand what she was saying. "You want to take her away?" I asked. "She needs family," she said. "I'm family," I replied. That was when Lily lost it. She grabbed a glass from the counter and slammed it down so hard we all jumped. It didn't break, but the sound did. "Stop fighting," she yelled. Her eyes were wild, bright with tears. "You're all acting like she's a thing. Like she belongs to somebody." "We're just," I started. She whirled on me. "You're not family," she screamed. "You're not my real mom, you're not related to me, you don't get to decide everything." My lungs forgot how to work. My mother-in-law put an arm around her and shot me a look of fierce satisfaction, like this was confirmation of a theory. "Sweetheart, calm down," she crooned to Lily. But Lily wasn't done. "Why are you even here?" she spat at me. "Mom is gone. You're just you. Just you. Just Hannah. Just an add-on." The words lodged in my chest like broken glass. I wanted to scream back that I had been there for 6 years. That I'd packed lunchboxes and driven to soccer and sat through school plays and cried when she sang off key. That I'd loved her mother with everything I had. But she was 14 and raw and trying to find someone to blame who wasn't already in the ground. So I did what no one in that room did for me. I absorbed the hurt and didn't throw it back. I swallowed, forced my voice to stay steady, and said, "I'm going to take a walk." I grabbed my coat and stepped outside into the cool air, where the echoes of "You're not family" could bounce around without witnesses. In that moment, I truly didn't know if she was wrong. Because if the people around you decide you're not family, does your love count? Does your grief count? Does your place at the table exist if everyone else pretends it doesn't? I didn't know. Not then. In the days that followed, the plan her grandparents had hinted at solidified. They wanted Lily to come live with them for a while, which quickly turned into "for the school year," which began to sound suspiciously like "permanently." "We just think she needs a stable environment," my mother-in-law said on the phone one night. "She's confused, Hannah. And honestly, you're not blood. Courts look at that." I was standing in the laundry room, gripping the edge of the dryer so hard my knuckles were white. "Julia made me her guardian," I said. "We talked about this. She wanted Lily with me." I could practically hear her rolling her eyes. Julia wasn't thinking clearly at the end. She was on so many medications. "We have to do what's best now. Are you saying you're going to fight me in court?" I asked quietly. She hesitated just long enough. "We'll do what we must," she replied. The room spun a little. I had just lost my wife. I was trying to hold on to my daughter through her grief. I was barely sleeping, barely eating, functioning on autopilot. And now I was being told I might lose her too. To people who thought my existence in their family was a clerical error. I hung up and slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor, my head in my hands. I thought about giving up. I did. I thought, maybe they're right. Maybe she would be better off without me. Maybe she needs people who share her blood more than she needs the woman her mother loved. Then I pictured Julia's face, pale in that hospital bed, her fingers gripping mine. "Promise me you'll take care of her," she'd whispered. "I promise," I'd said. Promises made to the dying are not things you walk away from. So I wiped my face, stood up, and called a lawyer. Meeting with a lawyer when you're in grief is like reading the fine print on your own life. We sat in a small conference room that smelled faintly of coffee and paper. The lawyer, a woman in her 50s with calm eyes, reviewed the documents Julia had signed. Healthcare proxy, power of attorney, guardianship papers, her will. She was very thorough, the lawyer said, and very clear. "She was always like that," I said, folding and unfolding the edge of a tissue. "She named you as Lily's legal guardian in the event of her death," the lawyer continued. "And she designated you as primary beneficiary of the estate." "The estate," I repeated, like I'd never heard the word. "Yes. The house, joint accounts, insurance, her shares in the company, and any other community property." I stared. I thought some of that would go directly to Lily. Or to her parents. The lawyer nodded. "There is a trust set up for Lily that activates at 18. But she was very explicit that until then, you were in charge." My heart thudded. "She must have known her parents would challenge things," the lawyer added gently. "She even left a note about it." She slid a handwritten page toward me in Julia's looping script. "If they try to push Hannah aside, remind them who was here. Every day. Every doctor visit. Every parent-teacher meeting. I love my parents, but they don't get to rewrite reality. Neither does my ex Hannah is Lily's mother too. Tell them I said so." I swallowed around the lump in my throat. "What about this idea that they'll challenge guardianship?" I asked. The lawyer folded her hands. "They can try," she said. "But the law is on your side. Unless there's evidence you're unfit, and there isn't, they have no grounds." "What about?" I hesitated. "What about this house? They talk about it like it's theirs. Her parents helped with the down payment years ago. Could they? She shook her head. There's a process. The mortgage was refinanced. The deed was updated. The will reflects that. She smiled faintly. In fact, I expect in the next few weeks you'll receive some formal documents confirming all of this. I walked out of that office feeling like someone had quietly handed me armor. I hadn't asked for power. I hadn't asked for any of this. But Julia had placed it in my hands because she trusted me. Because she knew, even if Lily screamed otherwise, that I was family. The question now was, would I use that power to fight, or to punish? Because those are not always the same thing. The envelope arrived 3 weeks later. It came on a Tuesday morning, like bad and good news in my life have a habit of doing. A courier knocked, handed it over with a polite nod, and left. I stood in the doorway staring at the official logo on the front. My name. My address. My stomach twisted. Lily was at school. Her grandparents had calmed a little after the lawyer sent them a formal letter outlining Julia's wishes and the legal reality. There had been fewer calls, fewer veiled threats. A calm before a storm, maybe. Or just a calm. I took the envelope to the kitchen table, sat down, and opened it. Inside was the updated deed to the house. And my name. Only my name. I didn't know what I expected. Maybe a joint ownership, or some complicated legal language I'd need translated. But it was plain, ownership transferred to me upon my wife's death. I sat there staring at the paper, feeling the weight of it settle on my shoulders. This house was where Lily had lived her whole life. Where Julia and I had built a family. Where I'd just been told I wasn't family. And here was the proof that, at least in one very concrete way, I was. I thought about calling her grandparents and saying, "You want to talk about what's best for her? Let's talk about stability. Let's talk about the fact that if anyone is staying in this house, it's me." I thought about marching into Lily's room that evening and saying, "Actually, I do get to decide. Because your mother trusted me more than anyone else." I thought about all the nasty, petty, wounded things I could wield with this piece of paper like a weapon. Instead, I folded it carefully, placed it back in the envelope, and put it into the drawer where we kept Julia's will. Legal truth didn't need to be shouted. It just needed to be there when it mattered. When Lily came home from school that afternoon, she walked past me without a word. "Hey," I called after her. "How was?" "Fine," she said, vanishing into her room. We did this dance for a while. She'd toss little grenades. "Grandma says you're just clinging to us because you don't have anybody else," or "Grandpa says the house wouldn't even exist if it wasn't for them," and I'd diffuse them as gently as I could. "Your grandparents are hurting," I'd say. Sometimes people say things when they're hurting. "So do I," she shot back one night. "What if I didn't mean what I said at the funeral? Does that count?" I froze. She glanced up at me then, quickly, like she was bracing for impact. "I know I hurt you," she muttered. "You don't have to pretend I didn't." I sat down across from her at the table. "You did," I said honestly. "It hurt a lot." She swallowed, looking down at her textbook. "But," I added, "you also lost your mom. You're allowed to be messy. I'm not going to hold one horrible day against you for the rest of your life." A tiny, almost invisible relief flickered across her face. "So I'm still," she hesitated. "I'm still your kid?" My throat closed. "Yes," I said. "You're always my kid." She sniffed and wiped her nose on her sleeve, pretending she wasn't crying. "You shouldn't want me," she muttered. "I've been awful." "You've been grieving," I said. "That's not the same thing. The shift didn't happen overnight. Grief doesn't move in straight lines." But little by little, things softened. She started telling her grandparents no when they suggested she move in with them, for a trial period. "Hannah needs me," she said once on the phone. I heard it from the hallway and had to lean against the wall. Her grandparents weren't happy. They came over for a talk, sitting in our living room like a board of directors. "We're concerned," her mother said. This arrangement. Hannah, you're not. We didn't exactly picture you raising our granddaughter alone. Julia did, I said quietly. She made sure of it. My father-in-law frowned. She was under a lot of medication. No, I said, more firmly than I'd spoken in months. She signed those papers before she got sick. And she signed the deed after, in full control of her mind. I know because I was there. And because the lawyers confirmed it. And because you know your daughter. She doesn't do anything halfway. They both flinched at that, because it was true. Besides, I added, this is her home. Uprooting her now would hurt more than it would help. We're her family, her mother said. I looked at Lily, sitting on the armchair, watching all of this with wide eyes. And what am I? I asked her gently. Not accusing. Just asking. There was a long pause. Lily stared at me, then at her grandparents, then back at me. Finally she said, voice small but steady, "You're my mom too." Something in my chest broke and healed at the same time. Her grandparents weren't ready to hear it. "Lily, sweetheart, you need to think," her grandmother started. "I have," she interrupted. Her voice shook, but she didn't back down. "You guys are my family too. But you weren't here every day. You didn't sit in the hospital with us. You didn't see everything. Mom wanted this. She told me." Her grandfather frowned. "Told you what?" "That Hannah would take care of me," she said. "That she trusted her. That this is home." They looked at each other, their faces a mix of sorrow and pride and something like defeat. "We just don't want to lose you," her grandmother said quietly. "You're not going to," Lily said. "But you can't take her away from me either." Me. It wasn't lost on any of us. The conversation ended without a neat resolution. They left with red eyes and stiff shoulders. We all had salt tracks on our cheeks. But something fundamental had shifted. Not because I waved a deed in their faces. Not because I threatened legal action. Because a 14-year-old girl, in the middle of her worst pain, told the truth out loud. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the person who stays. I never did use the deed as a weapon. I used it as a safety net. When worry crept in at night, would they still try something? Would the school question my rights? Would some officials side with real relatives? I'd remind myself that Julia had thought of all of this. She had put pen to paper in a world that still too often treats queer families as optional. She had ensured that when she was gone, the person she trusted most would be the one legally standing guard. Over time, the deed became less of a symbol of conflict and more of a quiet reassurance. The house was ours. Not mine alone. Ours. I painted Lily's room a new color one weekend. Something brighter, at her request. We hung new pictures in the hallway, some with her mom, some without, so every memory wasn't a knife. We set a place at the table for Julia on her birthday each year. We told stories. Some sad. Some funny. Some inappropriate enough that Lily would yell, "TMI," and then laugh till she cried. Her grandparents came around more slowly. They still made comments sometimes, small digs about how things used to be, or traditional families, but the edge dulled. Especially after Lily snapped at them once during Thanksgiving. "If you make this weird for Hannah again, I'm leaving," she said, dropping her fork with a clatter. Silence descended. Her grandmother pursed her lips. Then she sighed. "I'm sorry," she said. "To both of us. It's hard. But we're trying. Trying doesn't undo harm. But it's a start." People sometimes ask me, in quieter conversations, if I ever wanted revenge. If I ever dreamed about slamming that deed down in front of my in-laws and saying, "Actually, this is my house, get out." Of course I did. I'm human. But every time I played that fantasy out in my head, it ended the same way. Lily in the middle, torn, forced to choose sides between people she loved. Grief had already made her choose too many things. So I chose differently. I chose to let the paper sit in its drawer, solid and unbothered by anyone's opinion. I chose to show up, day after day, in the ways that don't make headlines but make families. Rides to school, dinners together, being there at 2 a.m. when anxiety wouldn't let her sleep. I chose to prove, quietly and relentlessly, that I wasn't going anywhere. And over time, without fanfare, those choices did more than any courtroom battle ever could. They turned, "You're not family," into something else. I'll never forget the first time Lily introduced me to a new friend from school. "This is my mom," she said. No qualifier. No hesitation. The words were casual, tossed over her shoulder in a hurry. But I had to turn away for a second, because my eyes flooded. I wasn't just Julia's widow anymore. I wasn't just the woman on the deed. I was what I'd been trying to be since the day a 9-year-old with a turquoise backpack asked if I was the new girlfriend. I was her mom. If you're listening to this because you've ever been told you're not real family, let me say this. Paper matters. Law matters. Protection matters. But love lived out, over time, matters more. You might not get a dramatic envelope with your name in bold letters. You might not get the satisfaction of a deed arriving in the mail with legal proof that you belong. Sometimes, the only proof you get is this. The way the kid you've raised calls you when they're scared. The way they look for you in a crowd. The way they say, "I'm glad you're here," and mean it, even if they can't say, "I'm sorry," yet. Our story didn't end the day the deed arrived. It didn't end the day my daughter screamed that I wasn't family. It continues in every ordinary afternoon we share now. Doing dishes, arguing about curfews, laughing at dumb shows, saying her mom would have loved this or hated that. My wife is gone. My grief is not. But neither is the family we built together. And if there's one thing I know now, it's this. Family isn't just who you're born to. It's who you stay for. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.